Literacy practices used by history teachers. That would include the basic umbrella of reading like a historian. The main concept behind reading like a historian amongst the literacy practices is looking at history not as a set timeline, but as a way of organizing connections, people, events in like a three-dimensional space. This is what I think history should look like. This differentiated, totally busy, amazing scatterplot of 3D space. It's known that literacy can be expressed in 4 different ways: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. These 4 different literacies are all used within a history classroom. A speaking kind of literacy is the language you use, the vocabulary you use, in reference to people, places, events, and that's all within the hopefully within the assignment. Stereotypically, reading is a lot more important to me in a history classroom because it relates to primary documents, secondary documents, supporting evidence, relating to the time period when and like newspaper was written, who wrote it, their biases. And when you're reading it, you have to be able to understand those different reasons. Listening as a literacy is how you can put into your own conceptualized narrator in your brain that what's being said, you can kind of categorize it and understand what's happening, because most of the time, a history class, whether it's the teacher that's talking, whether you're doing group work, you're going to be doing listening. It's not just going to be all about discussions. When it comes to actually writing as a literacy practice within a history classroom, I feel like it's more so focused on the student and their ability to like take notes. For instance, for here, you can't really see what I wrote, but you can see the organization. This is for a history class that I had taken, and it talks about like the Silk Road, Mongols, trade networks, and this is like the main focus for me. If I can look at my notes and see what I wrote, what the main points were, because in a quick glance, when I go to look back, I can kind of see what the professor or teacher thought was most important, and whether I make personal notes like doodles or pictures that go along with it, it's easier for me to remember because I'm visual, and all students are different in the way they take notes. And it's not just like writing essays in a history classroom, because essays can just kind of get washed down or just people would trail off, and it doesn't make sense. This is the standard off of CPALMs that we'll be using, and it says, examine the controversies surrounding the proliferation of nuclear technology in the United States and the world. A common artifact that can be used in the class is propaganda. This picture of propaganda makes it easier in the sense to teach because it's less likely for students to understand what it's saying because it's in Russian, and it leaves for an amount of interpretation for what the actual meaning is. Hopefully towards the end of prodding or students' observations, they could get out of the fact that these are probably United States soldiers based off their attire, and they're crafting an atomic bomb made by the US to go to Russia disguised as a peace dove. And when you're teaching a lesson, you can't just lecture. You've got to be able to use maps, whether it's physical or political, letters that people write to each other, textbooks, popular photographs, or even graphs. When it comes to using the propaganda that was either shown earlier or the artifacts that was just previously shown, all of these different additives in the classroom should be able to help the context and conceptualization of thinking of history as a three-dimensional space. For instance, alright, so this is literally how I see it. On one end you could have 1 year, on the other end you can have another year. So you could visualize like just a regular timeline, but in the means of a three-dimensional space, There could be one nation that was created in this time due to this person, but some person, like down in the past, they had an interaction with somebody else and helped create another nation. So when you think about it as a three-dimensional space, you could have one time here, and then somebody's over here helping this person over here and help developing, because otherwise you don't know why certain nations don't help each other. Certain nations will remain allies until the end of time based off something that's happened in the past. Why certain problems have developed out of the past and how they can't be fixed. Because without thinking that way, that just makes history extremely flat. We have the ways to help the kids, but how did we get there? We have experts, also known as historians and or amazing history teachers. These experts that countlessly talk about the artifacts that I just showed you that went like that way somewhere, have been able to communicate with each other in certain different ways, because how else are we supposed to know how to teach the kids that are struggling in school? The experts that are able to communicate with each other what's important also emphasize the different technologies that are important in the classroom, like multimedia such as propaganda, music, with all movies. The different added artifacts, it's also important to know that the textbook is a good base of learning. That's where the majority of our knowledge off of, dare I say, Wikipedia can come from. And I mean, not just historians, but they want to put as much information as they can within the textbook to help kids get kind of just the first level of what they should cover. The textbook isn't totally useless, it's just that most kids don't like to learn that way. Thanks so much for watching, I truly appreciate it.